Hello, Create Schools. Today I'm going to talk about our third case study, the Berlin Wall. We'll look about how secure was the USS Control over Eastern Europe, how well it secured Eastern Germany. So go ahead and get out a piece of paper and a pen and take these notes down. I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide and get started. So first, just to review, here is a map of Berlin, and it was divided into three sections. First it was divided into four sections: France, British, and America. And when these three sections joined together and formed Trizonia, which was later become named Western Germany, also Berlin, they joined together too. So we have these two areas. We have East Berlin and West Berlin. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. There's nothing that you need to copy down here. So the question is, why were people leaving? Basically what was going on is we had one city that was divided in half. We had our capitalistic side on the west and our communist side on the east. And to begin with, everything was pretty much okay, going on the same. There was no problems. But as communism became more controlling with your less freedoms, the people in the West started getting basically more and more. So life was progressing in the West where it was stagnating or even going backwards in the East. So when you're living right next to it, you can easily go across to West Germany, and you experience very different things than when you're in East Germany. And some people even lived in one side and worked on the other, and it was really quite interesting. Families lived on both sides, because if you think about it, if you have a house and suddenly, if you think we're in Munich, if you live in Munich and another family member lives in Munich or a friend lives in Munich, and suddenly it split straight in half, people just didn't get up and move to the other side. They actually just stayed where they are. It's not that easy just to move. And so people were freely moving back and forth. But then people started thinking, life is better in the West. So the people then actually started moving and leaving the East and moving into the West. The shops were better. They were able to buy lots of different things. They had better freedoms, and they were thinking, maybe capitalism is where we need to be. And it was very, very clear about this in Berlin. Also remember that there was the Berlin Blockade, and so that was really, in their face that the two places were actually really different. I have a chart here so you can see how many people were leaving, how many hundreds of thousands of people were leaving. And then here, that would be where the wall was built. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the wall. Go ahead and pause here and take down those notes if you haven't already done so. Okay, so when the people were leaving East Germany, the big thing they talk about is the brain drain. And I found this little meme here. Here's your brain packing up and leaving. Basically, skilled workers and highly educated people were the main people to leave. They're the people that cottoned on and, got it a little bit faster, that things were going on. And so they actually left as fast as they could. Basically, I was talking about hard to move because of housing, but if you have people who lived on the other side, you could just get up and leave and move in with them. So this looked very, very bad when all of the smart, educated, skilled workers were leaving. And so it was very negative propaganda. So here I've got a Soviet cartoon trying to combat that. Here we've got Germania. This would be your communist, powerful, strong horse going in and riding over the weak capitalist donkey. So again, you always have to make sure you read the captions to really understand that, because if you don't read what's going on, you would probably misinterpret that. So a 1959 Soviet cartoon, the caption was, "The Soviet stallion far outclasses the capitalist donkey." So go ahead and pause and take those notes down, and then we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so what happened? Basically, overnight, a barbed wire fence was put up around East around or through Berlin. Now, the wall itself was built only through Berlin, and around West Berlin there was barricades, but it wasn't so much like a wall. So it was built on the 13th of August in 1961. Oh, 1961 is a lovely upside down year. If you flip it around, it's still 1961. Excuse me. Like I said, first a barbed wire, then later concrete. And so once the concrete wall was built, it was totally sealed off, except for there were a few different spots that you can go through. Checkpoint Charlie is the big one. Those are the ones that actually the people could move through. Like I say, there were other checkpoints, but then those checkpoints were used for different things. It prevented millions of people moving from the east to the west, from communism to capitalism. And already 2.6 million people had left. And Kennedy, he was quoted as saying, "It is not a very nice solution, but a wall is a hell of a lot better than a war." So something just to think about it. So there's always a lot of pictures of people on either side of the fence looking at each other. You find pictures of family members looking at each other thinking, what's going on? Okay, but no one knew or had an idea of really what was actually going to happen. Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. Pause here if you haven't already done so. So immediately, the immediate consequences of the building the Berlin Wall was very obvious. People stopped going from east to west because when people tried, they were shot. Here is your checkpoint Charlie. Okay, and so Berlin, it says, became a focus point in the Cold War, but as we know from the Berlin Blockade, it already was. Berlin, it strengthened the focus throughout the Cold War. So this is our last slide. I also want you guys to think about what it was like when we went to go see the wall last year, kind of get an idea and think about, all of those things that you've experienced and understood and all the stories that you heard. So if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know.